So just just begin by adjusting your postures, just making yourselves comfortable, and then understanding that you can change your posture at any time during this practice, because there's no such thing as a right posture. We're more interested in just starting off by being comfortable, which means your body isn't bothering you. Your posture isn't bothering you because you don't want that to be at the forefront of your practice. So let's just give each other a few moments to just readjust postures. One useful thing is just the positioning of the spinal column. If you can just be aware of your spinal column and use your spinal column like a frame to balance your body so that you're using less muscular effort and just being. One thing we're going to do throughout this practice, in fact, it pretty much sums up this practice. It's about being present in this moment called the now. And I know many of us, we've read many books on the subject of meditation. Some of us come from religious backgrounds. And there's often one thing that we continue coming across, and that is that, and this is usually because words are very limited in their ability to convey teachings and practices which are very experience based. And this particular aspect which I'm referring to is that of treating the mind as an enemy, treating the ego as something bad that needs to be obliterated and gotten rid of. Simply because I think we've seen in our own lives, in the world around us, in all of the wars, whether it's some of the wars we read about and see in our news channels, or whether it's the wars that are taking place right outside our homes, the war against drugs, the war against terrorism. There's a lot of pushing against. And in this practice, you begin to discover that which you push against persists and often becomes stronger. So what if we were to begin today's practice by simply making peace with the mind, the ego? Some teachers even call it the personality. If you were to If you were to wonder how you could use this mind, this ego, this personality, and by personality and ego, I simply mean all of the information that has been fed into it from the moment it was born, all its likes, all its dislikes, its ideas about gender, its ideas about sexuality, its ideas about what constitutes a respectable living, finances, awards, status, the way we should look, all of those are part of this entity we refer to as the mind, personality, ego. Now we begin making peace with it by simply acknowledging that it is through the mind that we learned this language that is allowing us to communicate in this way. Well, right now it's perhaps a little bit one way, but I speak a language called English. And because somewhere along the line you learned this language, you picked up this language, you understand these sounds that I'm making. And you know that because if I were to speak a different language that I am familiar with, but you are unfamiliar with, all you would hear would be sounds devoid of meaning. And so you're beginning to grasp how the mind does serve us. That which we have accumulated does serve us. And if you want to take it a little bit further, we remind ourselves that through this practice, even though we may seemingly appear to be doing nothing, we're either sitting here, we're lying down, we're not out ending wars and feeding the homeless and all of that. Just sitting, breathing. But what we are beginning, what this practice is really about, is to discover how the mind, how we can use the mind as a tool to translate this moment called the present moment. And that's it. You may notice that you're thinking about something or the other. At least I'm sure most of us are. How the mind continues to move. We call that the momentum of the mind. Because it's so much easier to stop the body from moving than the mind. But because for most of us our eyes are closed, the phones are either silenced or switched off, books closed. We've set aside this time so as to no longer distract the mind. And when we stop distracting the mind, you begin noticing it. And what you'll initially notice is its movement, its momentum. And whatever you notice in your mind right now, it may be the result of a conversation from earlier this morning, how busy, how whatever you are feeling, earlier on this morning, or it might be events from the last few days, from work, something that's been bothering you. And if you lead a very busy life, it's more likely that you will notice all of these movements. I should be doing this. You'll be planning. It would have jumped into the future. I have this to do and that to do and this to say and these meetings. And this is all good for this practice because that's what this practice is about. It's about noticing this momentum. And because we've switched off our televisions and our podcasts, because our eyes are closed, because we're no longer browsing the internet and engaging with social media, we're not adding to the momentum of the mind. And so whatever we find is just what is. And it's a little bit like a fan on the ceiling or one of those desk fans, where up until now, it's been stimulated, it's been switched on, there's been electricity flowing through it, powering it, more and more stimulation. Have you ever noticed? I want interesting conversations. I want the next movie. I want to do something. And when you're completely happy, it begins to create things that might bring you in the opposite direction because it likes to be doing something. But what happens when we sit down in this way? When we no longer add stimulation, when we when we switch, when we turn the switch off, using the metaphor of the fan, when you turn the switch off, have you ever noticed the fan never stops immediately? It doesn't stop immediately, and you would not want it to stop immediately. You would not want to stick your fingers through it in an attempt to stop it because it has its own momentum. It is moving at a particular speed. And if you can see your mind in the same way, it continues to move. But like the fan, once it's switched off, once you are no longer adding stimulation to it, it gradually begins to slow down, and all you need to do is to be aware. Initially, just an awareness that this mind is a separate entity and you are watching its momentum. But the mind is a little bit trickier than the fan because you know when you're switching the fan on, you know when you're switching it off. It stays or switched off, unless there's an electrical fault, of course, but you know when you've switched it off, and you can just wait and watch as its momentum slows down until it becomes completely still, stops moving. But the mind is a little trickier because we so often unconsciously switch it on. Because you're watching your thoughts. Notice you're watching your mind, you're watching your thoughts. And then you see something within the mind. It might be something from the past. It might be about a conversation. It might be about your work. It might be about relationships. It might be something from the past or something you've watched in the news about the future. Or it might even be about a sound that has surfaced around you right now. A car alarm, somebody knocking on the door, doorbells, mobile phones, traffic. It might be a thought about a sensation that you can experience within your body. What do I mean by a thought about a sound, a thought about a sensation? I simply mean that you're either thinking that you like it or you dislike it. It basically makes a difference to you. It matters. That crying baby, I hope it stops crying. I never noticed the ticking of that clock, but I wish I should have put it in a different room. Notice likes and dislikes, or a particular body sensation. Why did I choose this posture? My knee doesn't feel really good. These we call, in these practices, we call them judgments. And it simply means that you're encountering something in this present moment that matters to you, either in a positive way or a negative way. And when it matters to you, when these judgments arise, you will find yourself turning the switch on. A dialogue will begin, and you will get sucked back in to the thought process, becoming once again identified completely with the mind. And it often starts off with something in the present moment that's completely harmless. But one thought leads to another and to another, and I'm sure you're all completely aware of this. And you wind up in a completely foreign and different land, so far away from the thought that started it all. Minutes has passed, sometimes hours. And this is good. It's good to notice this simply because these are examples of how the mind uses us. Or another way of saying it is simply the effect of being identified with the thought process, with the mind. But in this practice, we're going to learn how to focus on only the thoughts that are relevant to this present moment. And so that conversation that you might be thinking about with your partner, with your kids, with your colleagues, they're not here right now. And therefore, it's not relevant, so you shelf it or you release it. Let's begin with the actual process. A process that will help us to enter this present moment where things are quite comfortable, at least I hope they are. And if they are not, please readjust your body's posture. But what I mean is your stomachs are fairly comfortable and full. And even if they are not, food is quite easily accessible. the temperature of the room around you, comfortable. You have a reasonably good degree of privacy. You have access to this incredible technology. And not only do we have access to this technology, we have the freedom to connect in this way. And then, no matter what is going on within our bodies, and I'm referring to those labels that doctors often give us, whether to our bodies or our minds, irrespective of these labels, we are able to participate in this practice, and therefore an indication that there is more right than wrong. All of these added up together, we're in a quite a pleasing environment, in a good space, in a comfortable space, in a safe space, a comfortable space. I said that again. And so when I ring the bell, that's what we're going to begin exploring. Just land on the chair or the cushion that you're on. How do you know you're sitting on a chair or a cushion? Or how do you, if you're lying down, how do you know that you're lying down? You explore the sensations, those points of contact. And notice you have started using your mind to translate the present moment. Because in this present moment, your body is resting on a surface. And your mind is telling you this because when we speak of those points of contact between the body and the surface underneath it, the mind directs you to those parts underneath your body. And it's almost as though you were using the mind as a magnifying glass to focus on just these particular areas. And then you'll notice your mind drifting away to one of those plans that you have later on today, or one of those stories that has been on your mind for the past few days. But the first thing you will do is you will ask yourself, is that relevant to this present moment? And the answer is almost always no, because you have set this time aside for this practice, bringing a pause to those conversations, those relationships, work, everything else, so that you may experience this present moment more completely, more totally, possibly than ever before. You embrace those sounds that we referred to, the traffic, the car alarms, the crying babies, as a part of this present moment. And the moment they are embraced as this moment, all of the burdens contained within those stories that we have been carrying around for so long are released. With the ringing of this bell, the next bell, surrender your bodies, your muscles, your bone, your skin to gravity. So your skin loosens itself, your muscles, they too become relaxed, and your bones, in particular the joints that connect your bones, they begin to loosen. And you continue to direct your mind to the sensations that are being experienced underneath your body, focusing on those points of contact, the molding of your body against the cushion or the chair. Two seemingly separate bodies molding to the shape of each other, supporting each other. And remember how we spoke of judgment, releasing judgments, releasing the judgment that seemingly leads us to believe our bodies to be separate from these surfaces. That surface underneath you, atoms, molecules arranged in a particular way. Your body, atoms, molecules arranged in a slightly different way, all held together by some energy within the atoms, within the molecules, within the particles. An energy that we will simply refer to as the essence of life itself, no longer seeing these surfaces as separate from us. And so planting yourself, feeling the support, your body pushing down against that surface pushing back against your body in the exact reverse of energies brought about by gravity, a perfect balance allowing you to sit and breathe so comfortably. Notice how we are from the library of information called the mind. The mind has learned so much of our trades, of our professions, of our lives, of our cultures, of our foods, but all seemingly irrelevant except for the ability to focus on the sensations Sensations which in themselves have no meaning, sensations that once translated through the mind give us meanings such as a soft surface, a cushion, molding, warmth, cool, hard. Now direct your attention to the tips of your fingers. Can you notice there is a director within you capable of directing the mind? And notice how the mind obediently follows its instructions. The tips of the fingers, bring this attention to the tips of your fingers. That part of our body which we often associate with the sense of touch. Feel the surface upon which your hand and your fingers are resting upon. Most of us will even feel the contact between finger and finger. The tips of my fingers are resting on a part of my leg near my knee. And so I feel the fabric of the clothing. I feel the warmth of my body through the fabric. How about your experience? What are you experiencing through the fingers? And there are 10 fingers, the 5 fingers in the left hand and the 5 on the right, or however many fingers it is you have. That's not the point, it's the sensations. Even if it's just numbness, even if you cannot feel anything, that is your experience. There is no right, there is no wrong, because we are all artists in this practice. Artists with our own unique interpretation of the present moment. We do not tell the artist what color to use, especially the abstract artist. We simply accept there is no right color, there is no wrong color. And in the same way, this practice is an art because none of us are going to be completely duplicating the experience of the other. This is our own experience, our own unique individual experience. And more importantly, the mind filtering these sensations that are entering into its comprehension through the mind. Sensations, neither warm, neither soft, neither cold, until they get filtered through the mind that learned what warmth is, what coolness is, what fabric is, what flesh is, what numbness is. And if you have started to get glimpses into the stillness, the quietness, the peace of this present moment, you are beginning to grasp one of the most important qualities of the mind, and that is its ability to focus on only one thing at a time, one thing in a moment. And as you direct it into this present moment, this the stillness and the quietness and the peace of this present moment that you begin getting glimpses into until your mind and its momentum carries you away into the past or to the future. But we use the bell as a call back into presence, a call to attention, a call to return back into this present moment, where there is comfort, there is warmth, there is security, and so much more. And one of the benefits of practicing in a group such as this is that, as we've already noticed, our mind wanders. Our mind does wander. But when you're in a group, you know that there are others in this group who are present, aware, in the moment. And we leave the momentum of our mind and join, align ourselves into the momentum of the group. And those who are present, bringing us back, centering us, anchoring us, grounding us into this moment called the now. And not only do we tap into the present moment of each other, but the present moment of the tree outside our window, the present moment of the birds sitting on its branches, unconcerned about its next meal, or its past. We tap into the present moment of the mountains and the hills and the blades of grass and all of the animals, of the moon and of the sun and of the stars. Present moments occurring in every corner of this universe. Tapping into it. Perhaps this is what Eckhart Tolle refers to as the power of now. Your fingers, and now directing your attention to the palms, and the back of the hands. and the life within these hands. That even though you may not be seeing, you are experiencing a combination of atoms and molecules with nerve endings and blood and flesh and bone and so much more, which we will simply call life flowing through our veins. This awareness, directing this awareness up the arms, the forearms, and then the joint, which we refer to as the elbow. This sounds very simple, simply because it is this simple. Our present moment, and we are simply exploring it with the curiosity of a child simply because in this present moment you are reborn, free of your past, free of everything you have learned. Perhaps even exploring the inner parts of your elbow and noticing your ability to distinguish the inner elbow from the outer shell, the angle of its bend, and then the major muscle groups in the upper arm, which make up the biceps and the triceps, which join into the shoulder muscles. So you are aware of your whole arm, both right and left, beside you, resting on a particular part of the body. You are learning, practicing. We are practicing, reminding ourselves of our ability to direct thought to this present moment. Later on, you will sit down to your meals. You may prepare your meals. You may clear up after your meals. And you will continue with the practice by inviting only those thoughts that are relevant to that particular process in front of you. Even releasing judgments such as this part is more important than that. Something that has given birth to the whole fast food industry, where we see the consumption of food as far more important than the preparation and the cleaning up. In this practice, we learn to release these judgments and appreciate every aspect, every breath, every bite, every slice, every smell, every scent, every step. Our ability to coordinate our muscles, to hold a knife in a particular way, to steady the whatever it is we're about to slice with the other hand, feeling textures, grip. Notice how each one of these activities will give us relief from the stories that we carry, our past, our anticipations of the future. And we will notice thoughts, we will notice questions arising within the mind. But if I don't plan, I need to plan for that eventuality. If this happens, if that happens, as we practice, as we continue with our practice of being present, we will begin to discover how, when the moment arrives, we will have the ability to give ourselves completely and totally to the present moment, which also means stepping out of fear, anxieties, worries, and the conditioning within the mind, and do exactly what needs to be done at that precise moment. We read about people who become heroes during moments where there are such emergencies, whether it's a terror attack or a fire or a storm. People who step outside of their thought process and immediately become heroes. Mothers lifting heavy vehicles when their children have become trapped underneath them. Developing so-called superhuman strength. And so this is a practice also of what religions have used words such as surrender to describe. That the future will take care of itself. My practice is to be present here in the now. And right now, that is exactly what we are practicing. Let us, with the ringing of this bell, bring our attention to our shoulders. The exploration of the shoulder muscles. A group of muscles we often keep quite tense and tight. Using this awareness as an opportunity to simply release an intention that there be peace, there be relaxation, there be looseness within the muscles of the shoulders, noticing the weight of your arms pulling down on your shoulders. And how the shoulder muscles they join into the shoulder muscles. They join into the chest muscles. The chest muscles that cover the rib cage. Your ability to tune into the lungs, the movement within the lungs as they brush against the inner parts of the rib cage. feeling the gentle rising and falling of the chest wall and the rib cage, and the accompanying sensations. Notice how the director directed your mind to this region of the body. Notice how we coexist with our mind, because it is the mind that learned about the rib cage, that gathered information about the location of the chest and its muscles, its ability to distinguish between muscle and bone and lungs and all the rest. How we appreciate the mind. We treat it as our friend and no longer an enemy that needs to simply be contained, entering into a much deeper and better understanding, a new relationship with the mind. One where we develop the ability to observe the mind from a space that is so much larger, so much more vast, a space that is filled with kindness and wisdom and understanding and an infinite amount of patience, the type of patience that can only be experienced in the present moment, where the next moment is released and the last moments are released, the eternal present moment. And let the director now release an intention. That awareness move down towards the stomach region, where we begin by exploring how our breath is experienced within and around the stomach. How, as we breathe in, the insides of the stomach, they balloon as the air moves in, how the stomach walls, the muscle, the skin stretches, rises, and then falls as we exhale and as we release our breath. To turn this into a more vivid experience, let's change the pace of our breathing by breathing in as deeply as we can. Feeling that stretch, the rising, rising of the stomach wall. Pausing for a brief moment, experiencing the pause and the stillness, the gap in between breaths, and then releasing as slowly and as gently as you comfortably can, noticing the way in which the stomach wall falls, falls, falls. Noticing the way in which the insides contract. continuing to observe this rising deep breath in and falling gentle and slow exhalation, magnifying every sensation. Releasing an intention that the digestive process within the stomach return back to its most optimum level. This very digestive system that is so mysterious, that appears to act to extract from the food that we consume the essence, that very essence of everything that we eat and drink, discarding of the rest. An incredible process which we so often take for granted, appreciating it. And now directing our attention and our awareness to the whole pelvic region. Back to those points of contact between body and chair, body and cushion, body and surfaces underneath us. And then the legs with the bend around the knee, the joint, our ability to again explore the inner parts of the knee and distinguish these from the outer shell. The ankles, the feet, the toes, the soles of the feet, the tiny bones within the feet, and with the ringing of this bell, aware now of your whole body sitting here or lying down, breathing. A body of awareness, a body of consciousness present. Getting a more three-dimensional image or experience of your body. Up until now, we've been exploring them in tiny bite-sized bits, but now, as a whole, sitting here, breathing, in this comfortable space with its temperature, with its security, with its technology, and so much more, which we are only beginning to comprehend and get glimpses into this present moment. And now the final bell. Followed by a bell that will symbolize the beginning of our true practice, where we will bring this awareness and presence with us as we experience using our five senses as doorways into the present moment. This moment, and then this moment, and the subsequent moments from moment to moment and breath. 2 breaths.